Also, you look at like one of the teams we've mentioned so much over the past few years for having this identity is the Boston Bruins, who, although
who, as of late, this identity has sort of, I don't know. Do you guys get the feeling that some might be wrong in
well, I think
Boston?
something's wrong because announced earlier today, probably about an hour before we started recording, Jim Montgomery was fired from the
Into the
head coach
sun.
position. He was fired into the yeah, like Boston Bruins are
He was
below
fired from a
500.
ro from a SpaceX rocket ship into the sun. Yeah.
And this is
Uh,
after as well. I think all of us, because there's been the history of the past few seasons of people predicting, oh, the Bruins are going to have their fall off. And then they don't. They go like 10-0 to start the season. And then this year, I'm realizing in all our predictions, we're like, yeah, Boston's going to be good. Is it because, and then like, oh, nope, is struggling.
I think it's because every year we predicted they fall off, and then now this year we're like, well, obviously they're not. We all
Yeah.
think it's gonna happen. We're just not gonna do because it never does. And then we said it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna fall off, and then they do.
Well, there's a
And
couple
I couldn't be
things.
happier.
I
However,
wonder
I do
how
want to
much of
make
an
a point,
impact.
James, just before you go. I want to
Yep.
talk about what you just said about Boston culture. Do you feel like that almost has transitioned away from the actual hockey team and more to just Boston fans and as a city and in the building that they are now the embodiment of the Boston Bruins and culture is the fans and how gutless and ruthless they've been in criticizing this team and how they're smart fans and not only that but Boston they do not put up with shit. They
No.
won't all they know is success and titles and championships. And if you don't give them that, they won't take it. And the way that the
Well,
Bruins have turned on their team or the Bruins fans have turned on their team has just been incredible to watch because I haven't seen a fan base do this quickly in a while. Like the Bruins have
Well,
had
I
success
mean,
well,
lately.
I think it's like
with
the fan base has known what they want from the team for ages, and the
well,
team's delivered in terms of the style of play and how everyone in Boston, like, I
You'd think they
wonder,
built
it
had
all
built
kind of
up
fell
some
apart
rapport
with
though.
the Jeremy Swayman negotiations.
Dave, I just want to say
That
That
was
was
yeah,
one
that's
thing
just when I started to shift
that was the
is
for
domino.
sure. And then it's
And
like,
Boston.
okay, if you're gonna fight for all this money, you better back it up. And the team,
Nope, Dave's gone.
Dave's, yeah, as he
and
was
they
saying, the
haven't been.
team has fallen
And
off.
now it's
Yeah,
like all it's done is just anger and that frustration of just like, who does this guy think he is that he's bigger and better than the team, the Boston fucking Bruins. And
And then the
now the
team's
Boston Bruins aren't the
underperformed.
Boston Bruins anymore.
And Elias Lindholm hasn't had a good
And
start
it
here.
where do we
He's
go from here?
been like half a point a game, and they were hoping for him to take a step forward or a step back to what we know he can be.
I said from the beginning, he's not the answer in Boston. Remember that discussion that we had before the season started, where I asked you who in the Atlantic Division is a worse number one center than Elias Lindholm, and
And
there's
no
no one.
one.
Every single team in the Atlantic Division had a better number one center than Elias Lindholm,
And it's been proven now, like Elias Lindholm has
and
been
a lot of them better
the
number two.
worst one.
Elias isn't number one
I
anymore.
mean,
It's Naka. He's not the
yeah,
fact
like
that
it's not, but it's not like Elias Lindholm's fault. It's not any of these this guy's fault. It's just this.
It was the
I
expectations
think
were
they.
put on him, and
Mhm.
we all kind of knew he wasn't going to be able to meet them. Uh,
Well, I think that they overestimated how robust the Bruins culture was a little bit. Obviously, we know it's very strong and everything, but
mhm.
at the end of the day, you still have to have some sort of consistency from year to year in the way that you play. And I don't think that it really has just been there this year for the Bruins. And it's been a little surprising because last year even they were still good. Like they were still really, really good. Obviously in the playoffs they disappointed.
Yeah.
Um, for Bruins standards, I guess. They still beat the Leafs in the first round, which,
I think that they
90%
disappointed
of
for any team
NHL teams will
standard
take
because they
90% of NHL teams and NHL fan bases would take a first round win as glowing success. We forget how just much the top teams
yeah.
of this league have dominated success wise, but so many teams are starving for just a first round win.
I think
We
what's
could
I
go
mean,
through
important with
the
this,
list and it's like,
I
if you
think
how
what's
think
long has it
about
important with
it,
been?
this though is
if you think
how
about
they
it,
won and then how they then lost against the Leafs. The Leafs almost came back in that when they had no right coming back in that series. Boston should have won that in five easily based on the way they were
Mhm.
playing, and Boston kind of almost fumbled it. And then against the Panthers, they won the first game, and then there was no competition. Florida walked them out of the building, walked them out of the
They walked them
series.
like a
Like they
dog
were
after they
jokes.
also embarrassed them the year prior.
Yeah. And like it was the year prior at least like they blew it, and then this year there was nothing to blow. They were just terrible against the Panthers.
But like, I understand you gotta do something. Was Jim Montgomery like, was he the problem? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm asking because I don't know, but
Rarely,
the
Is
way I
part
but
see it
of
is, it's like
there's been
I
a bunch
just
of
don't think the roster was very good.
no. Like
no,
I agree with you, Dave.
I just don't think the
Rarely,
roster's very good.
rarely is it the
They have
coaches.
good D, but their forwards are not deep enough.
No,
Trent
like
no.
Frederick is not going to like score you enough goals to be consistent on like a team that doesn't have, like a Connor
Yeah.
McDavid or like
The only line that's been scoring consistently has been their fourth line
like a
with
McKinnon
like
Pasternak. Montreal has Caulfield. You guys have your goal scorers, but you need other things to win you the game. Like just having a guy who's an elite goal scorer like Pasternak doesn't just mean success. Look at
no,
Caulfield in Montreal. The Canadians haven't been great in a while, but they've had him. Look at DeBrincat in Detroit. Like just having a guy who's elite at putting the puck in the net isn't enough. You need the whole
Mhm.
thing. And I said this from the beginning. Like yes, Pasternak's elite. Yes, they have him, but like Marchand's not who he was. Elias Lindholm's not a number one center. Pavel Zacha is good, but he's like a three on a cup contender,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
a two center. Like there's just
I'd say
not enough
two on the wing
surrounding these
or
guys.
third center, really. Like he hasn't proven that he's good enough, really. And yeah, like their
And
fourth
yet,
line has been their most productive line, which when you see that on a team, that's red flags all over the place because it means everyone else has been
the Atlantic
disappointing.
Division's also better.
Yeah.
Like the
When you
Atlantic,
look at
like
this here, like Boston's
lost in this
falling.
is
I think Boston's might be beneath the Sabres right now, if I have it right.
Tampa's been unreal. Tampa's
Yeah.
had a really good season. And I think
You cut out a little bit there,
it's like,
Dave.
massively expectations. Sorry, the teams that don't like exceed greatly their expectations or fall greatly short of their expectations. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now.
I'm getting my connection's unstable. Okay. Anyways, the Lightning, I don't think we're expected to be bad or extremely good, but I do want to give them credit for they've had a bit of turn. They lost Stamkos, like that was a thing, but I think the Lightning have it in an Atlantic division that's been greatly more competitive. And I think that them and Florida have kind of pushed the pace and just the urgency on the rebuilding teams, especially
Hmm.
because I feel like for a long time in the Atlantic Division, you had teams like Ottawa, like Buffalo, like Detroit, like Montreal coming, rebuilding. It's like one day the changing of the guard's going to happen where these teams start to fall and the other teams start to slip, and that didn't happen for a while. And I just those rebuilding teams kind of put the
Yeah,
urgency. These guys aren't just going to fall and give us a spot. We have to take it.
exactly.
And I kind of
And
think that's what's happened a little bit.
yeah, I think
Maybe
that's what
not
happened to Boston
necessarily
right
with the
now.
other, but specifically the Ottawa Senators are like, we're gonna take it. We're gonna take a spot from you guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna go. We want it. It's ours. You got like you aren't like the mentality. I think has really there's more urgency it seems with these rebuilding teams of like, oh, we want to take a spot like now.
Yeah.
We're not just gonna get it. We're not just gonna like we see Buffalo like they've been bad for a decade now, over a decade you're not just going to naturally rise through the standings. Like you have to take it. And the Bruins
They're
seem
letting
to, I don't
them.
know if they necessarily rested on their laurels, but they got a little confident with just how little they need to go take a spot. And now they're kind of
I think they
falling back
had
in the
really confident with
standings.
their offseason here and like, oh, we have these pieces. We're going to be pushing for the division title again. And when that didn't happen, they've kind of been stumbling right now. Like
Not only that, but how much of their great success was having a tandem of Olmark and Swayman last season.
oh yeah. And the fact that
apparently a
now
lot.
Swayman's has struggled because he didn't have a training camp. Corpusalo, like none of us expected him to
But
like we
having
expected him
like,
to be an okay
yeah,
backup, which like yeah, you
but
basically
it's
could put
not just
any
the,
goalie in and it's like
yeah.
each of these goalies could win the Vezina trophy on this
But
team.
it's not as simple as just like you take out Olmark and you replace him with a different goalie. It's you take out Olmark and you don't get those split starts anymore that advantaged both Olmark and Swayman, where since they both individually were kind of playing like less than they would if they were
They're
each the
both
starter, they
rested
could have a higher, yeah,
anytime.
they're both rested. They kind of had like a really good camaraderie. There was that internal competition as well. Now
Yeah.
Swayman's the starter. He's starting more. He's the guy. No fucking competition for his job. He got the money he wanted, whatever. But this system that they had that kind of pushed these guys to be better and also like
Hmm.
decreased the workload and created this kind of like
You
just
could lose
just
your
these
job
little
at any
advantages
moment.
goaltending wise just compound over a season, and it's not necessarily just about getting the save but also what getting the save does to the mentality of the team and the confidence of the team. And right now with the Bruins, the seeds of doubt have started to be planted, and once those seeds of doubt are planted, it's really hard to unroot them, and drastic measures need to be taken to get those seeds of doubt out of there. You look at the
Hmm.
best teams in the NHL, and they regardless of whether they win or lose, they play the exact same way. But now the Bruins are kind of panicking. They're changing the way they're playing. They're aware that they don't really know how to win anymore. So they're kind of they're all over the place. And this thing can seriously spiral. And I don't know who if they've named an interim for Jim
I'm
Montgomery
not
or if
sure who
they
it
plan on
is.
hiring a
Yes, they have.
replacement.
It's us. Oh, read his name. It was Josh Duco? Not Josh. It was. Sorry, one sec. It was Sacco. Uh, Joe Sacco is the interim.
Good
I
luck to
don't know
him.
much. I
I'm
don't know enough
sure that
about
the
him
team will kind of
to
get a new
comment.
coach bump and stuff from that. But I think
Sometimes they
that
don't. Look at the Ottawa Senators last year. That was a different
that's true.
situation, understandably, but they usually get a new coach
Yeah,
bump. Sometimes they don't. And
no, for sure.
watch, they're gonna go on a tear now.
I mean, yes and no. I don't like obviously we know like there's voodoo and this or whatever, and yeah, of course, Watch are gonna go tear, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think that
the more I'm saying about
this
this
might
is
be
like,
it. Like a lot of teams are kind of hitting the wall this season, and I don't know that that's a coincidence or if it's indicative of a larger trend. Like just how I talked about earlier, how like how the NHL is changing, seem to have changed more this season, and the rate at which teams are like adapting and getting new strategies and
mhm.
stuff has really picked up.
I've seen that
And
I think this year there's gonna be so much more competition for those wild card spots.
look at the fucking Sharks, man. Look at the San Jose Sharks. Like last season, they were deplorable. They were not an NHL team, and
Yeah.
they weren't a watchable product. And now this year, they're fun and they're
We think about
competitive.
having
And you watch
Bedard
a hockey game with the
Celebrini
Sharks, and
there
yeah, they're
to
probably not
pull
going to
teams
win,
away from
but they could.
competition.
Yeah, but they also
And
push the rest of the teams that to take them seriously, you know. And every team in the NHL has done that. Like, there's no team in the NHL right now that's not trying to win like
yeah,
seriously.
every
And
team right now, there's no one trying to tank. Like you've had your Bedard Celebrini years where you have a bunch of teams that are
mhm.
like, okay, we'll
This
suck
isn't
for a
that.
bit.
You know,
And
Higgins
now
is going to be good, but he's not Bedard.
every good team is now either holding on to their spot in the light, or they're a team that like, okay, we just drafted a whole bunch of good players. We're gonna come at the heels of all these people. Like there's no one who's looking ahead at these drafts being like, okay, we'll rebuild for that.
Yeah.
Everyone is there's no easy nights. There's no easy.
Boston right now with a new coach coming in, I'm really interested to see how the players kind of respond and what kind of hockey they start to play now. Because it
Mhm.
felt like the message was a little bit lost on the Bruins. I don't know, like I don't want to say they like quit on the coach or necessarily they weren't trying or anything like that because I think that's hogwash. And
It
I think a
doesn't
lot of people they
seem
say
that would
players
be
don't
really
try
out
or
of
something.
character for the
I think that's
players as well.
ridiculous. You don't get to that level with being lazy or whatever for 99% of NHL players.
No,
But
and
I
also
think
that
that
doesn't fit what we've seen from the
yeah,
players here. It just looks like that's not something that they have done in the past, even when like Bruce
but
Cassidy was
it
fired.
yeah, it just didn't seem though that like they actually like believe like they didn't have like no they lack hesitation where it's like if we do what the coach says like we win like I don't know that that necessarily has been there and it's like for the new Bruins coach coming in it's like how do you restore that not only
Hmm.
this idea that like if we do this we're gonna win but like also who are you like who is this guy like how long has he been with the Bruins organization how well do the players know
He's
him like
been
kind of things
with
like
them
there's
for
so
14
many
years.
variables.
Just to tell you here,
Okay, perfect.
he's for 10 years. He's been with them for 10 years. He's been an assistant coach since 2014. So, I mean,
Hmm.
That could be exactly what the team needs too. He
I
could
think,
have the answer, and they could
I
turn
feel like they're
around
gonna
and
hire
have it.
someone else.
well,
I don't know.
there's a
I'm not
case,
sure
but
though.
I think, I, I
I
don't
don't know
think
enough about that
there will be
situation
any
to say much.
hiring going on until the end of the year. They'll
Mm.
give Sacco
I
this
feel
year
like they'll
chance to
give
earn
him a
his
little bit,
spot.
and if the Bruins continue to struggle for like, let's say the Bruins struggle for another couple weeks, they'll probably hire someone.
Yeah, I mean, if the Bruins suck for the next until Christmas break, that's probably what they'll give them. Then they'll definitely hire a new coach over Christmas.
Hmm.
They're probably right now actually looking. They probably have couple guys like, hey, are you interested in coming coaching if this doesn't
Yeah.
work out? But I can definitely see him just giving them somebody who they know. It's just a change. It's just changing them up. It's basically like
Hmm.
it's kind of bad. It's basically pulling a goalie, swapping a goalie out is what they're doing
Mhm.
for a team that's been sucking. And that's kind of how I feel like most managers treat their coaches nowadays this year is that, hey, our team's been sucking. This has not
Mhm.
been a good season for us. New coach.
It often seems like it's also just sent as like a message to the players of
Yeah.
like we have to do
Yeah.
It,
something. Look, we
it
fired the coach.
it's
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 on you
literally
guys. You're
it's
next.
it's
Doesn't always
basically
work though.
it's basically for them pulling the goalie in a game. It's like, hey, you guys been
Mhm.
sucking. We're gonna take him out. You put the other guy in. Do better. It could work. It could do well. In the past, it has done well. Like the Canucks, I think pretty good example of that was Boudreaux coming in and going on that tear, and then Tocchet coming in after Boudreaux,
I think
going on
every
another tear.
single front office in the NHL has on their desk a little red button with a little plastic cover on it, just so you know you don't get impulsive. And the little red button has a little Q on it. And I think the Bruins are lifting up the plastic cover on that button in anticipation of pressing it because Joel Quenneville's out there. Someone's
Oh.
gonna hire them.
Grenville would be a good pick, honestly. I like Grenville as a
A
coach.
team like the
Mhm.
Bruins seems just too just
They've made
I
decisions that have been like
don't
they've
know.
made
It
decisions in
feels
the
Grenville,
like
past that
something
means that like
there.
they might not have the
But
reservations.
they're the front
Gren,
office, so like Jeremy Jacobs is like literal Mr. Burns, like
Well,
just
you remember
pure
like what was
evil,
it?
like a
Mitchell
caricature of
Miller?
greed and like whatever. He totally hired. Yeah. I don't want to go in like a moral purity test of like all these like players, but like, and
No,
I don't
it's
want to
not
go into that
fair.
too, because then
I don't really
obviously, like,
want to
well,
be
what
there.
about this team? What about that team? Yeah, so it's like, yes, Mitchell Miller, fuck him, dickhead. Don't hire him, bad judgment. But again,
Yeah.
we could say that about a lot of different teams, and we don't
It
necessarily
just they
need to go
wouldn't
that
they
far.
probably wouldn't not hire Quenville for the
Yeah,
moral
but like a team like, for example,
reasons.
like a team like the Canucks, I don't see hiring Joel Quenneville.
No.
You know what I mean? Like those teams that kind of have those fan bases, and not only that, but those owners that, like the Leafs as well. I couldn't see it. Oilers would totally do it. And that's just a different mentality with the off. But like the Oilers have shown that like clearly they just don't care about that shit. Like it's just not. And you can argue about whether you agree with it or not, like whatever. Like that's a different discussion. But the Bruins seem like the kind of team that would have no qualms about that or no second guess of like if we
Hmm.
think he's gonna make the team better and win, we'll do it. We don't care if he's literally Hitler. Doesn't matter. Is I think kind of how they see it.
so you
Uh,
think they would hire
sorry, may not
Torts
they,
if
but
he's
I know
fired?
Jeremy Jacobs.